Today I am with a new to me author, Vanessa Burton. Vanessa, welcome to Between the Lines podcast.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
I'm excited to talk to you and dig into your teen and YA novel experience. So, just so everybody knows, Vanessa's pen name is actually V. Romas Burton. V.
Yes.
Romas Burton. So it'll be in the show notes. So you won't be confused by that as I was at first. So, so let's just jump in, dive into, tell us a little bit about you and how you started writing and just, your whole life story right here in another 30 minutes.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for having me. I'm super excited. My name is Vanessa Burton, but yes, I did pick my maiden name to be part of my pen name because my family had a big part in supporting me with my
Mhm.
writing journey, so I wanted to include them in there. So, we are a Air Force family. We move a lot around the United States, which has actually been very profitable for books and meeting new
Oh,
readers and
yeah.
stuff. So, things I never thought would be a good thing because moving is tough in itself, but there are positives to it. So I actually did not go to school for writing or English or anything like that. I've always loved books since I was a kid, but writing wise, I've never dabbled in it till after I graduated college and was kind of going through a rough spot. Didn't really know which way my life was going and stuff. And one of my friends suggested writing as an outlet to kind of work through some of these things and just kind of as a healthy way
All
to
right.
figure out life, you
Like
know?
cathartic.
Yeah, exactly. And so once I just started, I really enjoyed the process of creating stories and characters and how they went through things and, mirroring what you're going through life through your characters and how they overcome these trials and come out stronger in the end. And I really enjoyed that process and have learned so much. But I really did jump into the writing publishing world cold turkey, knew absolutely nothing. And I'm really happy to see how much I have grown through the process
Well,
because there's a lot to learn.
there is, but we all have to start from knowing nothing. I mean, none of us are,
Exactly.
it's a definitely, it's a journey and
It is.
it's not an easy one. So your books then, when you're writing for teens and YA, is
Yes.
this fantasy? Would you categorize your work as fantasy or how would you?
Yes. So my books are primarily fantasy books, but they all have biblical allegories woven through in
Love
them.
it.
So why I decided to write young adult, teen and young adult is that when I was a teen and young adult, I found it very difficult to find books that were had good morals
Mhm.
and exciting stories. So this has changed a lot with the Christian books now, but when I was a teen, the Christian literature was very focused on historical fiction and romance novels. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that was not my cup of tea.
Right.
I just at 12 to 15, I didn't really like it.
Well,
And so
why would a 12 or 15-year-old even want to read a romance novel, really?
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of truth to that, right? And so, where I went to, the regular book section, and I did find the great books and everything like that, but with that came content that not is always
Oh,
suitable
yeah,
for that age range, and there is a lot
absolutely.
of battles about it now, and I'm thankful people are speaking up about it. But I felt when I started writing that God called me to write books that did have these exciting, engaging stories that talked about and introduced His Word and the concepts the Bible teaches, but also in a fun and exciting way that is engaging for a younger audience that maybe has a little bit of these romantic elements and maybe a little bit of these other things, but mostly focuses on the journey of
Right.
finding who God is and His goodness and all that encompasses.
Well, and that's so important. It's critical that we have good literature out there that points kids to the Lord because there isn't, it's not out there. So
Yeah.
that's good for you. When you say that your books are all allegorical, biblically allegorical, can you like for the book number one is called Fortified, and that came out in
Yes.
February of 23. Book number two is called Justified. It came out in February of 24. And book number three is Sanctified, which came out in February of 25. And you have book four on the works coming out in January. So
Yes.
Each of those books are they're in the Legacy Chapters series.
Yes.
Is that correct? I'm trying to
Yes.
blurt all this out and still be articulate, so forgive me. Um, so are they tied together in a way that you should read book one before you read book two, or they stand alone? Or tell us a little bit about how the characters work in that and where the allegory comes in to your storytelling.
Yeah, so this series is so fun. Just one that I've been just absolutely love writing. So the Legacy Chapters is inspired by biblical heroines. So each book focuses on a different, or is inspired by a different biblical heroine. So Fortified is inspired by the story of Deborah. Justified is the story of Rahab. Sanctified is the story of Ruth. And then the fourth book, Unified, which comes out in January, is inspired by Esther. So each book focuses on that main character, but there's an overarching story that ties them all together.
Okay.
So I wanted to, I always love learning about the Bible. I did go to seminary as well, so I enjoyed that. But there's a lot of women in the Bible that no one really talks about or focuses on, and then I didn't learn about them till I was in college. And like I grew up in church and stuff. I'm like, why have I not heard about some of these women? Like I am a female, I should learn, I should know these
Well,
things.
especially since Ruth and Esther have their own books in the Bible, it's not like
Exactly.
Deborah who's hidden in the books of Judges, or Rahab,
Yeah, exactly.
who's hidden in the book of Joshua. So you don't, they're out there, very
Yes.
very focused, and yet
Yes.
the kids don't really hear about them so much.
Exactly, exactly. And so I've once I learned about these stories, I just loved them and fell in love with the stories and these strong women that, God used despite the times, despite the circumstances. And so I wanted to ask the what if question. What if all these women knew each other, became friends, and had to save their kingdom, from tyranny? And then it just took off from there. And it's been such a fun
Wow.
story to explore, and people have loved it. And it's been so nice when people enjoy your work. Um,
I am
so I've
so
loved it.
I have so much respect for those authors such as yourself that write. I have no creative imagination to come up with that world. I mean, even in my contemporary, if I'm going to write about a place, I need to have a picture in front of me
Yeah.
in order to really see it. I can't imagine building a world that does not exist. How do you go about doing that?
So sometimes it really depends on the process. So every book is written differently, even in a series, even with like the same characters. So with Fortified, the story just kind of came. It was just very easy. Like other authors talk about this. The story writes themselves. It just kind of flowed. It was very
Wow.
fun. It just I love Deborah. She's one of the biblical heroes that I really relate to and just enjoyed her story always. So I think that was maybe why I kind of inserted a lot of my own personality into my that character and stuff. But then later on in the series, when I wrote book three, Sanctified, which is focused on Ruth, Ruth's character's a lot different than my
Oh yeah.
personality. And so it was a little more difficult for me. But I wanted to create a series with different personalities, different struggles, because we're all different, right? We all have
Right.
different struggles. We don't all go through the same thing. So um, that was a little bit harder. And I actually did reach out to a friend for help with um, responses to things, reactions to things, because her personality is very more similar to how I wanted the main character in Sanctified to be. So it really just depends on the process. But every time I write, I do pray for God to give me the inspiration, to give me the words He wants me to write. Um, and like I said, sometimes the process it's like fantastic and like you're just like writing and
Right.
your
Right. Right.
fingers on fire. Then other times it's like I have no idea what's next.
So my degree when I was in college, I was a teacher, so I went into teaching, but my degree was in psychology or behavioral science.
Oh
So
wow.
I tend to go to personality profiling when I'm trying
Yeah.
to create a character. Have you ever done like using the Enneagram or the
Yes, I
Myers-Briggs?
have done that before. I have done that before, and it is helpful, especially when you're trying to when you have a big cast too of
Mhm.
characters and you're trying to
formulate where they
Keep them
fit.
all separate. Yeah. So
Even
one
knowing
about
how, even knowing though how, say if you look at a character like Deborah, she's a very strong woman, take charge. I would see her like if you were going to pick an Enneagram, I would see her as a 3, where she's just, those are the producers, they just produce.
yes.
And then you
Yes.
have a 9 who would be a peacemaker, which is what my husband is. And they're just oftentimes they can get run over because they don't
Right.
voice themselves. So you start looking at these different personalities of whatever your
Exactly.
characters are. And when you can read some of these, and they even have the Enneagram for Christians, actually, a book written by
Mhm.
that, so that you see everyone has a sin nature, right? But we have a go-to sin, and they talk about that, which I
Yes.
thought was kind of interesting. I had never thought of it in that way before, but it does help to navigate those questions sometimes.
Oh, definitely. Because what's going to tempt one person is not going to tempt the other person because
Right.
we're all different and everything. And I think that's the beauty of stories is that we put little pieces of ourselves within them. And I always think the best inspiration comes from real life. So even though I write fantasy, even though there's sometimes powers and sometimes there's giants or mythical creatures or something like that, the trials that my characters have faced, the insecurities that they go through are all things, I've experienced myself. And
Human.
then I just bounce off of that to
Wow.
further it into the story.
Now, was Fortify your first published book?
No, I actually have a whole other series
Okay,
that was
just
before
jump into
that.
that quickly. So, is your other series also teen YA?
Yes, so my first series is called the Heartmaker trilogy. It is teen and YA, but it's a little bit darker, a little bit grittier. It's still clean in the sense that it is all PG-13 for fighting and um all that with relationships and stuff like that. Everything is still PG-13, but it is a little bit grittier. So I always recommend that one to a little bit older teens, maybe about 14, 15, rather than like 12. Um, but that one is a story where the currency of the world is your heart. So it's not gory or anything
Hmm.
like that, but your heart is more like a stone, like a gem. And so when you're 18, you can take your heart and trade it at this festival called Heart Rain. And you can get whatever you want. You can get beauty, you can get strength, you
Wow.
can get power, but the cost is your heart.
Oh my.
So when the whole premise of the story is the main character, it's her time to trade, and she has to decide she's going to trade her heart away or she's going to go try to find her brother who traded his heart away several years ago. He disappeared, and she hasn't seen him since. But when she goes to get her heart extracted, it is not gray. It's not like a dull gray stone, which everyone else's heart is. Hers is like a bright red. It's alive.
Wow.
It's teeming with power. So that's taken from the verse in Ezekiel. Um, when I ask the question, the verse says, I'm going to replace your heart of stone
With
with
the
a
heart of
new
flesh.
heart. And I'm like, but what if that was true? Would we take that promise of God that Christ has given us seriously? Would we take it more seriously if that was a literal exchange, right? So, so yeah. Uh, so
Wow.
then she has to figure out what she wants to do. So a little bit of spoiler. So she decides to go find her brother, or else there's no story. And then
That's true.
basically she has to go fight through the seven deadly sins of the like this dark ones, the evil guy's realm to find her brother. So it's a little bit
Wow.
darker, a little bit grittier, but
You have got
uh
quite an imagination. But I
thank
can
you.
see, I mean, but your process, just the way you talk about that is such a biblical process of taking
Thank
scripture and
you.
making it come alive. It's exciting. Are your books available in Kindle Unlimited? Are they all in?
Yes, yes. So my first series, actually my publishing house, Quill and Flame Publishing House, just released a book box set of my first series, that you can buy all three books for $10 or the whole thing's on Kindle Unlimited. So, excuse me, that's very exciting. My that was my debut trilogy, and actually the first two books of that trilogy are award winning. The first book won
Wow.
3 awards. The second one won 1 award. And then the third book I never. entered it for anything because that's when my husband was deployed and I was about to have a baby and it was crazy. But that was my first series. I love the story. I always love it, but like I'm my own worst enemy. And if I could go back and edit it, I would definitely I'd never change the story. I love the story. But if I could like tweak how the story sounds, I would now.
Well,
But
you've
like you
grown
said,
as a writer, you know.
yeah, right,
I
exactly.
have a good friend who had written, we both got published the very same year. We started writing at the same time. We met at a writers' conference. We stayed
Hmm.
close, and she lives in Canada. And she just recently got the rights back to her first book. And she's,
Uh-huh.
I have to really strain myself not to go in there and do all the rewrites. You know, I've edited a little
Yes,
bit, but it's
yes,
hard because when you grow, if you look back 10 years, or 8 years or whatever, each book is a growing experience and you can tell that
exactly.
you've grown. But if we had to go back and fix them all, that would be very difficult to do.
Exactly. And I've had a friend who just had her first book published last year, and we were just chit-chatting, and I was telling her, hey, the same person who wrote your first book is not the same person who's writing your second book. And that's okay. It grows with you. And I've had people like like I said, I'm my own worst enemy. And I'm like, oh, my first series, I don't even want to look at it. But then I still had people reading it currently that message me like, this is amazing. I've loved this so much. Like you did such a wonderful job. This really spoke to me. And like God can still use that. Even though I think it's not good
Absolutely.
enough, God still
Yeah.
uses it.
Well, you're
So
speaking
which
to the
is very
heart. I
exciting.
mean, you're speaking to the heart of other people. So that's more, it's more than just a writing experience. It's a ministry. It's a heartfelt experience. And the
Yes,
other
exactly.
thing I think, like with my books, it took me a while to even realize it, but I noticed that my very first book that I wrote was after my Christian brother committed suicide. And
Hmm.
it was a cathartic, like you said, the writing is cathartic
Yeah.
experience for me. And I had to rewrite it several times because it was really dark when I first finished. And then
Mhm.
I rewrote and rewrote. But the point being, it seems like every single book I write, I'm going through a spiritual struggle or a
Yes.
spiritual
Yes.
rebirth or a spiritual growth. And it
Yes.
shows up in the books as I'm dealing with it. So it's not just you writing a story for the fun of writing a story. It's actually a heartfelt, God-given spiritual gifting at the time that you're writing it.
Exactly.
So maybe it's hard to
Exactly.
go back and look because you've changed so much and you've grown and you see, wow, it's hard to go back and look at
Exactly.
where we were. I wouldn't want to go back and
Yes.
see where I was 10 years ago in my
I
faith.
know.
Um,
Definitely, definitely. And one of the things that I heard at a conference years ago, because we always want to make it big, right? But big, what is our definition of big, But the speaker was saying if the only person your book helps is you, it's still worth it to write it. And I thought that was so good. It was so good because even if like you never end up publishing it, even if you do publish it or it doesn't do well, if it helped you get through something, or if it helped you grow, or if it helped you get closer to God, it was still worth it because you
right,
still matter.
right.
So I thought that was very good. I really enjoyed that perspective on it. I try to keep that in mind, when writing.
Well, I was at a conference. Alan Arnold was a speaker, and he had some of these conferences. You go to, you have a class every day for 3 days, and you pick one
Yeah.
class. And he was one of those that I had gone to. He was at the time he was the acquisitions when he started it, acquisitions editor for Thomas Nelson
Oh
fiction.
wow.
So
Hmm.
pretty big deal. And then he moved
Yeah.
from that and went into men's ministry group. But his thing, he was asking if you could take that book you've been working on that you've been struggling with for the last 5 years, and God told you to stick it in a drawer, close the drawer, and never look at it again, or don't let anybody else see it again, could you do it? And
Yeah. Right.
and so you have to look at that. It's like, well, he says you're writing in partnership with the Lord, that alone, you get to sit down with Jesus every single day and
Yes.
alongside him. That alone should be worthy of your time and your effort,
Yes.
if
Yes.
nothing else
My
comes from that.
Exactly. No, I agree. My good friend Amanda Wright, she actually just won a Christie Award for a debut, for her
Wow.
debut novel, Darkfell. But she did a post on Instagram about a couple months ago, and I told her, I'm like, I'm totally stealing this because she says my words are my worship. I'm like, yes, I love that because that's how I feel. That like I am a stay-at-home mom. I have three boys. We homeschool and everything like that, and like my God's number one, and then it's my family completely.
Right.
But writing, there's been several times where I've tried to walk away from it. I've done with it because life is crazy. And I'm like, I just can't handle all this. But every time God brings me back to it, like 100%. He's like, no, 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 no. You can still do this. And so I felt like I finally have accepted that this is my other ministry, right? My family's my first ministry, and then writing is my
Absolutely.
second
Yes.
ministry. But I love that my words are my worship, and I definitely feel that. So love
Well,
that
and
phrase.
you are definitely led by the Lord. I know there when before I got published and I was still struggling and I'd been writing books and I'd been working so hard and I left teaching, which at the time I left, I was making decent money,
Yeah,
because as you grow as a teacher, you do better. But
right.
I was frustrated. I remember going down and going, okay, I'm done, God. I'm just gonna, what if I just
Mhm.
give it up? I'll go back to teaching, whatever. What if I give it up? And I for whatever reason, because I always did my quiet time in the first thing in the morning, but for whatever reason,
Yeah.
I just needed to be in the Word, and I opened up the Bible, and I just kind of flipped through some pages and came into the parable of the talents, where
Mhm.
God gives each of them, and if you bury what I give you and you do nothing with it, and then I was like, okay, I get the point. So that spurred me on. So every time I tried to walk away or thought maybe I should be done, he always comes through with some encouragement
Yes.
to say, this is where you are to be. This is where I have you. Stay with it. So yeah, it's definitely a process. And I think a lot of people, I've had people I know say, oh, I'm going to write me a book and make some money. And I,
Yeah.
don't quit your day job because it doesn't
Yeah.
work that way at
No.
all. And one
No.
book isn't going to get you very far. You know?
No, no. And even the people you see that like do well, they still have to keep churning them out, churning them out, churning
Oh
them out
yeah.
because so many hands are in the pot taking money. It is very interesting just getting an insider's look of all that and how it really works. So you definitely do have to have a heart and passion for it to keep
Right.
going.
You have to. I have a friend of mine who I interviewed not that long ago, Heidi Gray McGill. She was saying
Hmm.
that it's a labor of love and it's a life, it's a journey. It's a hard, grueling journey. And if you think you're going to pop in here and just pick a genre because you're going to make money at it and move on,
Yeah.
you're fooling yourself and you're
Oh
wasting
yeah.
your time and you're wasting God's time because
Yeah.
it's not going to work that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember
Definitely.
my daughter, one time, she loves to write too. She's actually a librarian for Tennessee State University now, but she loves to write. And I would say, well, is it honoring what you're writing? Is it honoring to God? And she goes, well, Mom, there's all these authors out there and they make good money and they do really well and they're not
Hmm.
writing to honor God. Why do I have to? And I said, because you know
Yeah.
who you're following.
Yeah.
You know who your
Exactly.
Lord is. So you can't just go off on your own if you want to live for the Lord. You can't do your own thing aside and
Exactly.
live your part. So, you have to have both feet in one camp. You can't just
Yeah.
straddle that line.
Exactly.
you know?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And it's difficult, especially when you see that or other authors or who profess their Christianity and then you read their work, you're like, oh. Hmm.
Really? How does
So
that
you
work for
have to
you?
be careful. I know that a lot of people have the issue of making, especially in the fantasy genre, making things very dark. And it's like, it's
Mhm.
one thing to do dark to amplify the light, but if the darkness is taking over your book, like that is just like when you've gone too far. You know, there are lines, and
Well, the enemy will use those lines.
exactly,
And
exactly,
and if you're doing that, I mean, you have to think about too what you're writing, how that's affecting your reader. So if you're
yes,
writing something super dark and it's taken over your book, you're then in a way harming those that are reading it for your faith.
yes,
You're not being
yes,
a good witness
exactly.
for your faith that way. So I think there is a fine line. Even, Christian fiction, I've had people like I went indie last year, and
Hmm.
there are a lot of indie authors that they're indie and they think that, well, because I'm indie, I can write whatever I want. I don't have a publisher telling me I can't use swear words or I can't use that.
Yeah,
And yes, realistically in real life we do hear all that stuff, but there's
right,
still a way to deal with it without it being so in front that you're actually harming somebody who's reading it, causing them to
exactly,
stumble in some way.
exactly. And sometimes it depends on the storyline too, right? Sometimes
Mhm.
people sprinkle things in, and you're like, this doesn't even it could work without it. It'd actually probably be more powerful without it because every time there is like I have read some like I still read secular books and everything like that
Right,
too.
right, you too.
I'm careful with what I read, but still I read them. Um, and sometimes like when you're in a fantastical world and then there's modern day language used in it, it pulls you out of the story and
Exactly.
you're like,
Absolutely.
I
They didn't use
mean, sometimes
contractions
made
back
up words
then.
are better.
Well, and you see that on TV all the time. You see them putting in things to attract the worldly stuff that really
Right.
doesn't do anything for the story, except they're putting stuff in there just to keep the outsider people interested all
Yeah.
the time. So you're
Yeah.
trying to play to I think a lot of times they're trying to play to a viewer audience to bring in
Yes.
something just to appease rather than have it
Yeah.
be of any value. Um,
Yeah.
I hate to see that happening in books, and I hate to really see that happening in
Yeah. And you have to be careful too because books are it's hidden more in
it is.
books and you don't realize it. And I'm really thankful that the community on Instagram, I know there's book talk too, but I'm not on TikTok. But on Instagram, it's the Bookstagram community and they really take a stand for having clean books or at least books telling you what is in them so you're not totally blindsided by content.
Right.
Um one of the bigger bookstagrammers, she has a daughter who is a young 12, 13, and there it was a 9 book series. I'm not sure which series it was, I don't remember, but like every single book had been fine and it's been good, clean, fun story. And then the very last book, there was apparently a very explicit scene
Oh,
and the
really?
daughter like stopped reading it and she did tell her mom and so the mom was like, I'm so thankful, she came to me and told me she's like and that she stopped reading before it got too bad, but she's just like, why? Why? It's the last book in the series. Why put all the other books have been fine? Why feel the need to taint the mind of young readers, I mean, it if it's for like middle grade or young adult, that's your audience. It's not for like 30, 40, 50-year olds, they have their own section they can read,
But
but these are
even
for
kind of
these minds.
explicit at any point, being explicit, I think, is not
Yeah,
necessary.
exactly.
Yeah. You can, there is an author I read quite often, but there have been a couple books I had to turn away and put down because of the content. But for the
Yeah.
most part, her writing is very clean. She's very well respected. She's got a
Hmm.
great following, and she's probably a multimillionaire. So,
Yeah.
there are authors out there writing good stuff
Yeah.
that are worthy of our attention and it's secular as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
I
Yes.
also will read, like I'll read Kristen Hanna and Jodi
Hmm.
Picoult and some of those, but
Yeah.
Lisa Wingate, so a lot of these people, authors have really good books out there, but they keep them clean. So it's very
Yes.
beneficial.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that if the story is strong, then you don't need all those extra things. And like some of our classic literature, classic fantasy stories, these stories that have stood the test of time, like they don't have any of that stuff in
Right.
it. I mean, I know some things do, but those stories that like everyone wants to hear about, or like, Narnia, Lord of the Rings, classics like, Jane Austen's books are continuously being remade into stuff,
Right.
and they're all, but they deal with still real life issues and
Right.
stuff people are still going through, whether it's like a historical piece or a fantasy world, and the stories are strong and they relate through time, and you don't need extras to keep people entertained.
Right. Right.
And that's what I tried to do in my writing as well. I tried to make my writing timeless. And so if it was published 5 years ago, if it's published 3 years from now, you can still relate to the characters and what they're going through.
Well, that's one of the nice things about either writing fantasy or historical fiction, unlike
Yes.
contemporary, because you
Yes.
can kind of keep it
Contemporary
timeless,
stuff.
contemporary stuff. So, that makes it a little harder. Well, it's been such a pleasure talking to you, Vanessa. I'm excited about this. Make sure all of your information is in the show notes, including that
Thank you.
your Heartmaker trilogy. I'll put a little thing in
Yes.
there with a link to that so people can see that box set and get that if
Perfect.
they'd
Thank
like
you so
to.
much.
And I just pray this will be a blessing to you. And you have any last inspiring words for the audience? Anything you can, if somebody wants to be a writer?
um, If you want to be a writer, my biggest advice is write the story on your heart, the one that God gives you. I tell that to many young writers who email me and stuff. Not even just young age, just new writers, trends come and go. You can
Okay.
write to market, but as soon as you write to market, it's going to flip on you.
Except for
So right,
Amish, except for Amish
yeah,
fiction.
yeah, it's true. That's
That is
so
just
true.
hanging on. Oh,
It
sorry.
is.
That's true.
No, no, no. I agree. But if God's placed a story on your heart, write that story on your heart and stay true to that. And if it's meant to be, the doors will open
Right.
when the time is right. But it
Well,
does take time sometimes.
and it would be very difficult to write a story that's not on your heart. I mean, it would be
Yes.
you're just fighting something you don't need to be fighting. You know,
Yep.
keep
Yep.
it going.
Exactly.
Well, it's been a pleasure. I'm so excited. Maybe
Yes.
when the
Thank
next
you.
book comes out, we'll have you on here again and we can talk about that book number. Is it book number 4?
Yes. Yeah. And that's the final book in
And
the
then 5.
series. I know I kind of threw people off because there's 4 books and, and not 3.
But you know what? There are a lot of them that have 5, 6. Now they have longer and
Yeah.
longer series. So that's not a problem at all. But it's been a pleasure, Vanessa. Thank you so much for chatting with
Thank you.
me. I've enjoyed it. Bye.
Bye bye.